Ironically, when I was 16, I found out I had type 1 diabetes. And one of the first conversations I had with the endocrinologist was type 1 diabetes and pregnancy don't mix. You can never have a baby. And I
Oh,
was like,
wow.
okay. So I think I convinced myself that I didn't want children because that's
Mm,
easier
sure.
than accepting that bad news. But then I met my husband and decided to give it a shot. So we knew I was going to be considered high risk. Honestly, they were preparing me as a diabetic for a very large baby. So all my research was being done looking at, how to have this really large baby. But unexpectedly, at about 26 weeks, I developed like a severe form of toxemia. My blood pressures skyrocketed. My kidneys shut down.
Mm,
Because my kidneys shut down, of course, I developed congestive heart failure. So fluid started to build up around my heart. And I was at a local hospital, so they airlifted me to University of Chicago to a better high risk hospital. So things happened very quickly. That happened in a 3-day period. So
wow.
we went from again expecting, going very long, all the way to in-term and having a large baby to we have to deliver a baby quickly or mom and baby will both die.
Wow. Where were you at when you're at in your faith at this point? Did you consider yourself a Christian or
Oh
you think
gosh, I
about
would have
God?
told you I was. I would have told you I was. And I was thinking about this the other day and I thought, wow, how different things are and what I thought being a Christian was. And to be
Mm,
honest, like I never went to church. I didn't have that background. When I did go to church, I spent the night at a friend's house on a weekend and they went to church. So I hung out with them. When I was probably in kindergarten, I had a neighbor who would go to Awanas and, Bible school on Sundays, and I would tag along with him sometimes. And I feel like that was where the seed was planted. And even though it wasn't watered for a very long time, it was planted and it was in me. And I always had it in me that, I had this, I believe in God, yeah, I believe there was Jesus and I believe he died on a cross. And it was
yeah.
probably for me but I didn't know anything. And I really thought that was enough. I
Hmm.
thought that was enough. And there's so much more when you really truly just surrender and become his, and
Yeah.
start to follow him versus, yeah, I believe in him. And that's probably good enough.
So then what happened in that hospital room?
So when I was very, very ill, so I don't remember a lot of the details of the birth. And I didn't see Sarah I named her Sarah. When she was born, she was 1 pound, 15 ounces. So
Wow.
at her smallest, they lose weight right away. So she was 1 pound, 11 ounces at her smallest.
Mm,
And when they brought me in to see her, I was very surprised because I thought a small baby would just be like a regular baby, only really tiny. And I wasn't expecting all these tubes and monitors and plugs in her little brain and IVs in her heels and all the things that I saw her, she wasn't even developed yet. She didn't have ears or, her ears were still little nubs and no lips or, everything was just still so new. And she just wasn't ready for this world. And it wasn't what I was expecting. So it was really difficult. That was day 2. They don't really talk to you a lot about expectations until day 3 because
mm,
just survival for the first 3 days is all they're concerned about.
yeah.
On day 3, if baby makes it 72 hours, then they start having the conversations about all the potential complications. And that's where everything changed for me.
Mm. Well, tell me what changed. What happened then?
So here I sat next to, an isolette with my little girl, and I'm sitting there, and the doctors do rounds every morning. So this large group of doctors walked up, and I was sitting there, and they began to talk to me in some medical terms, which I'm somewhat knowledgeable just through my health. But they started to, I always call it like they rolled out the scroll of all this list of complications that she was
Wow.
potentially going to face. And, they said blindness and, they said developmental delays, potential kidney and heart problems. The list was endless. And as they were saying all these things, and you're talking to a person who had lived with diabetes now for 20 some years, I thought I had it all under control. I managed this disease. People always commended me on how strong I was and wow, how do you work those kind of hours and you have this disease? And it was always, how strong I was. And I thought that would be me in every situation and I would be okay with that.
Yeah.
And that's when it happened. I don't know where they were in that list, but I just started to cry. I started to cry a cry that I'd never felt before. I said, I'm looking at this little baby and I'm thinking, I am never going to be able to do this on my own. I don't even know where to start. And this cry came over me that was so deep. And the doctor's like, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, and I didn't know how to explain it, Allie. I didn't know what was happening, but it was like a cry. And I explain it now like a cleansing, like it felt good. And I thought, why does this feel so good? And I was just saying, God, I can't do this. I cannot do this. I can't handle this little baby. I need you to carry me through this. I need you to carry her through this. And I never said things like that before. And as
Wow.
they're talking, I'm saying this in my head, and I'm feeling this feeling that was overwhelming. And even then I didn't know what it was. Because again, my experience with knowing anything about it, I didn't even know what Holy Spirit meant. I just knew that whatever it was, and again, I didn't know. I still thought maybe potentially she was going to have all kinds of health issues and lung development issues and learning disabilities, and I still didn't know what that was going to bring, but it still just felt good, like it was going to be okay. And I
Yeah.
kept saying, I don't know how to explain that I'm okay with this. And then one of my friends, who was a Christian, said to me, she's like, Linda, that was the Holy Spirit. She said, you finally humbled yourself and gave him control and let him know that you trusted him.
Wow.
And I was like, that's what happened. And it just like then it was really overwhelming.
Yeah.
It was great. It never felt scary. Were there times we had bumps in the road? Yeah, and I was worried. But I since that day, I have gone through things that are unimaginable, and
Yeah.
I just know that whatever it is, whatever the result is, good or bad, that He is in control, and that I don't have to be, and that it
Mm.
will be okay because it'll be His word, it'll be His
Wow.
way.
Wow.
And that was huge for me. And then my journey started with just trying to get to understand all this that was happening. And I thought, why did it take me till I was 30 years old? But I can look back now and see all the preparation He was doing,
Yeah.
everything that the little tiny things that were happening in my life that led up to that moment. And a lot of, I was, again, I know it's not deeds that get you into heaven, but I wasn't doing good things. I was not, I was always a nice person, but I was doing
Hmm.
a lot of things that were not, that I would be ashamed of to even talk about now, my
Sure.
party life and all the things I was doing. And that all just like instantly, I just didn't want any part of it. I didn't want
Mm.
any part of it. I wanted something better.
You were a new person.
I was a new person. And when I hear people say, like, oh, oh, we hear all the time, oh, Jesus came into your heart. I said, it really does happen. I'm living proof.
Wow. What were the doctors, what was their reaction? Were they just kind of like, what's going on? Is she going to be, is the mom going to be okay? I mean, what were they like,
Yeah,
as you're
I,
kind of
I think, and I wish I could go back and see what it looked like.
yeah.
I think I may have been smiling while I was crying because they're like, are you okay? But I'm like, yeah, like, like kind of like giggly, but yet
Yeah.
crying. And maybe they thought I was losing my mind. I don't know because I didn't know to tell them right then. Like, do you understand? Like just now, I just surrendered myself. I didn't know to say that because I didn't
Yeah.
know that's what was happening. So they
Yeah.
may have thought like, oh, she might be losing it, or, I'm not sure what their experiences are. Maybe this has happened. It's a NICU. There's a lot of emotional
Yeah.
stuff going on in there. And I think maybe a lot of people surrender in that situation.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe they've witnessed it before, but I just know that it was like this weight, immediate weight off my shoulders.
So then tell me about little Sarah.
So little Sarah is now 24 years old.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
little Sarah has done some amazing things. We went to Indianapolis to speak in front of the Senate to get a bill passed to help premature babies that live in Northwest Indiana. So
Wow.
she does great things like that, but she's also right now in grad school. She's
Hmm.
going to be a physician's assistant. So she has
Wow.
broken all the barriers. I don't know that God works this way, but when they were reading that list to me, Allie, I said, please, whatever that list entails, just allow it to happen to me because I will be okay with it. I was like, please, just God, don't let this happen to my daughter.
Hmm.
And a lot of things happen that were on that list that happened to me. And every single time, that's what got me through that. I'm like, okay, God, I told you I'd be okay with this. And I know that you will use me in some way. Just one example, vision was a big thing. A lot of little preemies have, they go blind or they have really severe vision loss. We brought Sarah home, and a month later, the retinas in both of my eyes were detaching, which is the leading cause of blindness for diabetics.
Wow.
There's no cure for it, there's no fixing it, there's no glasses you can wear. So I started my surgeries. And from the day I went in, I just said, it's okay, because I asked for the suffering to be on me and not her. And it helped. And again, I don't know that God works that way. I don't know if he said, okay, we'll transfer all the suffering onto you, but it's okay. And I saw the why I needed to lose some vision. I really saw how some vanity in my life where I was worried about the way things looked. And I don't see too many things anymore. I don't see dust in my floor anymore and dog hair collecting and cat hair. So it's like, it's like almost like I had lost a lot of those things because I lost some of that vision that was making me see things I think that weren't important. And I gained the beauty of everything that God has created. Don't know, you'll hear too many people say they're thankful they lost 70% of their vision, but I am so thankful because I notice everything now.
Wow, what an incredible story. I mean, you talk about you were somebody who kind of prided yourself on the strength, your ability
Absolutely.
to handle anything, and now here you are kind of boasting in your weakness.
And boasting in my weakness. And it was weak then too. I just didn't know it. I just didn't know what I
Yeah.
needed. I only knew to depend on myself. So, and just one more amazing thing too is when I was diabetic, I can remember and I prayed, when I was that person that I called a Christian, I prayed for things like needs mostly. My prayers now are mostly like, wow, God, you're amazing. Like, how did you, I can't wait to meet you. I want to ask you how you thought of this. Like, what did you think of like a cat? I'm like, I love cats. So, but when I was probably, I don't know, maybe 15 years into my disease, I remember praying and just saying, God, if you would just give me 24 hours to feel good. Because with diabetes, I never felt good. It was a battle every single day with blood sugars up and down. And I was considered, a like unstable diabetic. So I remember praying and just asking him like for 24 hours. And I thought, I know that's kind of silly. Like God's going to say, oh, good, for 24 hours, you don't have diabetes. But you know what, Allie, my daughter was born. 5 years after she was born, I was put on the list for a pancreas transplant after lots of my health problems. And I had that transplant 20 years ago. And I have not had diabetes now for 20 years because of a
Wow.
transplant, which comes with some of its own things,
Sure.
but I do not have diabetes. So those 24 hours that I asked for have now translated into 20 years.
So what would you say to the person listening who is like you once were? They pride themselves in their ability to kind of handle anything, and they're strong, and they're thinking that sounds nice for you. I'm glad you found something that works for you, but I think I'm good. What would you say to that
Yeah.
person?
Well, I would say prepare yourself, because if you think that's working for you, he will put something in front of you that will force you to surrender yourself. And that's where I had to be. And I know that he knew to get into my heart, truly get into my heart, and for me to follow him, it was going to have to be something big. And I needed that. And as much as I don't ever want to look back and want Sarah to suffer, I know I needed something big to happen in my life. And I don't want that to happen to anyone else. You don't have to wait for this, big tragic moment to surrender yourself. Do it now. Do it, in this point of your life. So when that happens, you're prepared.
Yeah.
Because now I feel prepared for everything that happens. Now it's very, I think sometimes people think like, oh my gosh, don't you worry? Don't you, this is a big thing. I've had a lot of things besides the transplant. And I said, no, I just trust that he has my heart. He knows what's best for me. And if it's not time for me, I will be here. And if it's time for me to go, he will take me. But I just trust that he knows what's right. And I'll always be me, and I'll always do what I'm supposed to do and fight for my life. But I trust that whatever happens is in his hands. And I don't want anyone to have to wait until you're in a big moment like that to find him, because he's there now.
Snapshot Testimony is a Moody Radio podcast. If you'd like to connect, you'll find us on Facebook, Instagram, and now YouTube. Just search Snapshot Testimony. I'm your host, Allie Domerson, and together we're sharing the moments that shape a life of faith in Christ. Thanks for listening.